What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about handling your weapon at Air Force Basic Military Training. If you like military and or Air Force content, this is definitely the channel for you. So definitely join the family, hit subscribe, and make sure you click the notification bell to on so you know when I upload a brand new video. But before we get into it, let's start with the basics. My name is Michael Inman and I'm an airman in the United States Air Force, and I upload a brand new video every Monday. So let's get into it. So as many of you guys know, if you've seen a couple of my videos, but if this is your first video, welcome to the family. Glad to have you here. I do like to start all my videos with a little bit of context. So let's start with some. There are four combat focus areas during your time at Air Force Basic Training. And when I say combat focus areas, there's four elements of things you're being taught throughout your time at BMT that have to do with whether it be weapons management, weapons handling, of course, combatives and things of that nature. So what are these specific four combat focus areas? Well, the first one is weapon components. And so that is the breaking down of a weapon into individual components, putting the weapon back together, and then repeating so that you are not only comfortable with the weapon itself, but you also understand some of the different things that make a weapon work, which of course, if you are ever downrange, it is very important to understand how the components work together. So if there's anything causing you an issue, you know which component can maybe just be switched out with a newer, repaired version of that component. And so you're ready to go and your weapon is back into action. Next, you have weapon handling. And so that is when during BMT, you are taught how to hold your weapon, how to prepare for the kickback or the recoil, and different things of that nature. After that, you have marksmanship. And I'm sure all of my, weapons enthusiasts out there, you probably are excited about this part. You may have grown up hunting with your family, and so you probably want to get high marks in marksmanship, and you usually get a ribbon if you do pretty darn well. So in regards to having good aim and being able to actually hit the target that you intended on hitting, that is called marksmanship. And that happens a little bit later during your BMT experience, but of course is a part of it. And the last combat focus area that I want to highlight is combatives. And so if you're not quite excited about marksmanship, usually people are excited or very nervous about combatives, because combatives is when you get to do a very, very light mock version of fighting with someone. So it's interesting. It is kind of fun. I was in between nervous and ambivalent to the experience, but at the end of the day, I actually enjoyed my combatives experience. And yes, my entire flight was in a circle watching it. So luckily, it was not the most embarrassing thing I've ever experienced. It could have been, but it wasn't. And we will be talking about that probably in the future. So those are the four combat focus areas of BMT. And once again, they include weapon components, weapon handling, marksmanship, and combatives. But in this video, we're going to focus on the first two. A little after you receive your M16 or mock rifle, you are actually going to be asked to go into the day room with your MTI, and this is when you are going to be introduced to weapons components and or the components of your weapon. Really up to you, English. Okay. With your M16, I don't remember, and I'm not an expert, so don't expect me to answer complex questions in the comment section. But I'm not an expert on weapons, so I do not remember how many components it breaks down into, specifically the M16. I believe it was 8, but that could be wrong. Maybe 11. 8 or 11. That's my bet. But regardless, you are taken into the day room of your barracks or your dormitory, and your MTI breaks the M16 down into those individual components. And after he showed you how to put it back together, you usually, as a flight, are allowed to kind of hang out in that room for maybe 30 minutes to an hour of just practicing taking your weapon apart and putting it back together until you feel relatively comfortable with it. Somewhere during your time at BMT, you are going to have an examination in which you have to be able to break the weapon apart and put it back together in, I think, a minute's time, but I'm not positive on that. But regardless, definitely after your introduction to weapon components, try to practice it a few times before the examination, and don't be the one who, I don't know why it takes 5 minutes to put the weapon back together, when really it is not that hard. So don't feel nervous about it, but just practice it or rehearse it for all my theater kids who like that verb, rehearse it. Okay, so after you have been introduced to the components of your weapon, specifically in the day room, of course by one or both of your MTIs, a little bit later is when you're going to have a classroom moment in which you get to the section of your BMT study guide, which is the big book that you've been studying throughout BMT thus far, and you will continue to study all the way to all the way until the EOC, which is the end of course examination. And so one of the moments in which you're in a classroom, the lesson of the day is going to be focused on weapons handling and how to hold it correctly. And so this hour to 2 hour, I don't think it was 3 hours, let's say an hour and a half to 2 hour course for this particular lesson from the BMT study guide, it focuses on how to hold the weapon and a couple other things. You're also going to learn during that hour and a half to 2 hour block assertive control of a situation and authoritative commands. And so assertive control of a situation pretty much is a scenario in which you are in a guard position, let's say at your base and or outside of a building that you work at. Let's say you actually have joined the Air Force with a security forces contract. So it's a perfect example of that kind of situation in which you are guarding the base or building, and an unidentified party or persons approaches the gate. And there are proper, things you are supposed to do to control the situation. And so that is also what you're going to be reviewing during that hour and a half to 2 hours, is how do you assertively control a situation instead of just being nervous or like kind of on the fence of, please stop walking toward me, I guess. That won't work. So we do get to practice being assertive, and they do run through some very basic authoritative commands, meaning stop, drop your weapon, get on the ground. Not, please, if you would like, stop walking toward me, and could you maybe please get on the ground? I feel threatened. So it is during that hour and a half to 2 hours that you are going to learn those authoritative commands and how to deliver them properly. Now that we've talked about that, let's go outside. By outside, I mean you literally get to leave the classroom and have fun. Let's first say what it's called. So when you leave the classroom, after, like I said, you've learned the components of the weapon, how to handle the weapon, and now how to properly handle tense situations, the outside component is called FEST. FEST is when you take all of those lessons that you've learned about your weapon and about those type of situations, you go outside as a flight, and there's pretty much two things that happen. One, your flight is divided into two groups, and the first group is going to do pretty much situation run-throughs. So you are going to rehearse holding your weapon properly, being on guard, doing something called scanning, making sure there's no unidentified persons approaching your gate. And then you're going to run through some examples of someone approaching your guard position and practicing those authoritative commands. And then the other half of the group that's not doing the guard positions, which like I said is scanning and then doing authoritative commands, the other half of the group is being taught how to low crawl through a sand pit. And so there's 3 different low crawls, I believe. One is like you're doing this through the sand. The other one is when the weapon's beside you, which I can't quite give you a good example, but just know it's beside you, kind of being dragged a bit in the sand. And the last one I think is the weapon's on your back. So maybe it's a wet environment and you can't have it touching the water. But the point is the weapon is on your back as you're crawling through the sand. And really, the primary takeaway you need to know about the sand low crawl thing is that it is much more tiring. It exhausts you much more than you think. And that's all I'll say about it. I have given you a warning. All of my strong females and males, even you might wheeze a bit, like, but it's good to know how to do it. And it definitely makes you feel like you're in one of those, I don't know, war movies. So get your low crawl on, enjoy your time, but try to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth after, because it's gonna be rough. Also, try not to let all the sand get in your eyes, because no one loves pink eyes. So, I warned you. So that kind of wraps up the first two combat focus areas, including weapons components and weapons handling, and we will definitely discuss marksmanship and combatives more in the future. Just you wait. So if you enjoyed this video, definitely remember to subscribe, comment, and like. And also, if you'd like to see a little bit more of me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at michaelainman_. I wish you a great rest of your week, and I will see you next Monday.